All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, this one's going to be really interesting and different from our last few episodes.
Definitely a little further back in time than we usually go.
Exactly. And the source material is just fascinating. But let's get right to it. Today, we're going all the way back to the 17th century
Ooh, 1600s. Love that era.
to explore the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 in New Mexico.
A pivotal moment in history for
It
sure.
really is. I mean, this wasn't just some small rebellion. This was a huge victory
Oh, absolutely. A major victory for indigenous resistance against colonialism.
with effects that we can still see even today.
Definitely a turning point for sure.
And we'll be using this book to guide our deep dive today. It's called America's Struggle for Control, the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 in New Mexico.
Sounds like a good one. I'm ready to dive in.
Me too. So, to really understand just how significant this revolt was, we got to set the stage right.
For sure. Like, what was life like for the Pueblo people before 1680?
Right. What led to this boiling point?
Yeah, because things were definitely not peaceful before the revolt.
Anything but. So, it's the early 1600s, and the Spanish arrive in what is now New Mexico.
And with them comes a whole system of colonial rule that dramatically changes life for the Pueblo people.
It's a clash of cultures, really.
It's absolutely, and it was brutal.
Yeah, the Spanish imposed forced labor,
They really wanted to convert the Pueblo people to Christianity, and
tried to erase their traditional spiritual practices.
they went as far as dismantling sacred sites.
It's hard to imagine how disruptive that would be, just wiping away your entire belief system.
Totally. It was cultural upheaval on a massive scale.
And as if all that wasn't bad enough, there were also these intense droughts and famines happening around the same time.
Oh, wow. Adding insult to injury?
Nature was not on their side.
Talk about a recipe for disaster. It's no wonder things reached a breaking point.
Exactly. And that's where Popé enters the scene.
Now, there was a leader.
Tell me about him.
Well, Popé was a Tewa religious leader, and he had this incredible ability to unite all these different Pueblo communities.
Which, by the way, had their own distinct languages and histories.
Right. But Popé managed to bring them together.
Under this shared goal of resistance.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
was a visionary and a brilliant strategist because the revolt itself was incredibly well coordinated.
Yeah. August 10th, 1680.
The day everything changed.
Pueblo warriors launched attacks on Spanish settlements across the Rio Grande Valley.
And I think it's important to note this wasn't just random violence.
It was strategic, right?
Very much so. They targeted symbols of Spanish oppression.
Churches, for example.
Exactly, because those represented forced religious conversion.
They were fighting for their freedom of belief.
Yes, and for their land, their culture, their whole way of life.
And what's remarkable is they won.
Drove the Spanish all the way back to El Paso.
For 12 years, the Pueblo people governed themselves.
A period of self-rule.
They restored their traditional practices, rebuilt their kivas.
Those sacred ceremonial structures that were so important to their community life.
It must have been an incredible time of healing and renewal.
Definitely. It showed the power of indigenous resistance.
And it had a lasting impact even after the Spanish returned in 1692.
Because even under Spanish rule again,
It wasn't the same, right?
not at all, the Pueblo people continued to advocate for their rights.
They never gave up,
They kept their traditions alive, their languages strong.
and they maintained a connection to their land.
The Pueblo Revolt is a story of survival and resilience.
It really challenges us to rethink how we view Indigenous history.
Not just as victims of colonization, but as active agents fighting for their culture and their future.
We've only just scratched the surface today.
There's so much more to explore.
But what really stood out to you today about the Pueblo Revolt, I mean, for me, it's just so inspiring to learn about this incredible act of resistance and how its legacy continues to shape the Pueblo people today.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how different history might have been if other revolts had been as successful. What do you think?
That's a great question to ponder, and we encourage you to do just that. Keep learning, keep exploring the Pueblo Revolt and other stories of Indigenous resistance, because these are stories that deserve to be told and remembered. And we'll be back soon with another deep dive.